Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and those of a darker pigmentation. It is I, Alistair Crowley III, Deputy of Common Sense, and your ruler of racial regality. Now, I know that race is not a topic I normally cover on this channel, but there's a first time for everything, and boy howdy do I have a hell of an idiot for you today. Who is this idiot? Well, hold out your stockings. Christmas has come 8 months early, and we have 2 idiots. Santa is back with a vengeance, and he is here to bring you a white Christmas. If you'd like to see who these 2 mysterious idiots are, stay tuned to find out. Be back in a tick. Renfield, launch the intro.
There is nothing wrong with your browser. Do not attempt to refresh the page. We are now controlling all that you see and hear. We control the horizontal and the vertical. We can delude you with 1,000 videos or expand one single frame to crystal clarity and beyond. We can shape your vision to anything our imagination can design. We shall control all that you perceive until we see fit to release you. You are about to experience the depths of depravity that reach from the folly of human pursuits to the Deputy of Common Sense. Please stand by.
Allow me to introduce His Malignant Majesty, the ruler of racism, the benefactor of bigots, the Hierophant of hatred, the principality of prejudice, the great reverend of racial self-flagellation himself, Uncle Ruckus!
Master, I'm afraid that man is not Uncle Ruckus.
What? What the hell are you talking about? Of course that's Uncle Ruckus. He's black, he makes the same exact fucking points, and his name is right there in the title. That is Uncle Ruckus. I refuse to believe otherwise.
Master, please. I am telling you the truth. Please do not lock me in the wine cellar. It's cold and I have a drinking problem. I'm telling you that man is in fact Jesse Lee Peterson. He is a fringe conservative crank, known for spouting immense buffoonery.
Oh, come on, Renfield, you gotta be fucking kidding me. I did all this research. I studied Uncle Ruckus for 8 hours. You must tell me this before I do the research. That's 8 hours of my life gone, man. That's not cool.
I am terribly sorry, Master. I will not fail you again. I'm sorry, Master. Please don't lock me in the wine cellar.
All right, I won't lock you in the wine cellar. This time. But for the last time, are you sure that this is not Uncle Ruckus?
It is not, Master. I'm sorry.
Well, is he at least a self-hating black man who would sell his soul to be white?
Yes, Master, he is. Have I pleased you, Master? Have I done well?
Yeah, I guess you have. So I guess I can forgive you. This time. After all, you haven't done any permanent harm. In every practical sense of the word, he is, in fact, Uncle Ruckus. So, from this point on, that's what we'll call him. We will also be playing the Uncle Ruckus theme over the rest of this clip. Enjoy!
don't we end up with a kind of parasitic relationship between any group entering in a society then? Because you have other groups living in white society, they tend to reproduce more, or the migrants of these groups tend to have higher birth rate, so we never really have a stable society because everyone wants to live among whites, but they're not able to reciprocate.
Tiptoe from your pillow to the shadow of a willow tree and tiptoe dans les tulips avec moi. Bonjour, Monsieur Frog. Comment allez-vous this fine morning? Knee deep in flowers will stray.
Okay, hold the phone. Who the fuck let Pepe Le Pew out of his cartoon? Hey, JF, don't you have some autistic women to chase? I mean, really, why do you do that anyway? I mean, I guess if that's the only kind of woman who will go near you, I understand. But it doesn't say a lot about your supposed IQ if the only women you can attract are the ones who think your dick is a lollipop. Which, as far as size goes, it probably is. Gee willikers, Mr. Wilson. A white nationalist with a micro-penis who actively pursues romantic partners who are a bit weak in the upper story and then claims to be some kind of great thinker? Are you a few axles short of a wagon wheel? Jesus. I mean, sheesh. Talk about hitting the jackpot in the douchebag Powerball. Yikes. Let me explain this in terms you will understand. You look like an extra from a budget porno flick. The kind where everyone gets tested afterwards. Even the cameraman. Where in the world did the drunken peasants find you? Was it in the subway? Were you homeless? Did you get your start peddling hexagonal water? Do you have any actual friends? Any relationships at all that are not related to your politics, or whatever sinister tactics you use to dominate the minds of the mentally challenged? Wait. I just remembered something. I remembered that you have kids. Oh, those poor little orphans. Imagine growing up listening to the scientific equivalent of Gaston Lagaffe. And I know you got that joke, JF, and I know how much it hurts. Tell me, how many times in the past year have you caused your lab to explode? I need that number for an important paper I'm writing. It's an extensive study detailing the relationship between ethnocentrism and the tendency for a civilization to self-destruct. Okay, insult time over. Time to actually address your argument. What, pray tell, is the problem with the fact that minorities are reproducing at a faster rate than those of Caucasian descent? Why is that a problem for you? Are you so insecure in your own identity that you've based it wholly around your race? Let me see if I understand your position. You believe that as a whole, white people have certain beneficial traits that non-whites lack. And I believe that you have stated in the past that one of these traits is intelligence. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to strawman anybody. If I'm wrong, correct me. I may have ripped on you a teensy bit. Well, technically, I tore your heart screaming from its nesting place in your chest, then baked it into a crisp and ate it. But that's not the point. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Ignore me! Anyway, the point is I rip on everyone. I just gave you a little extra attention. Really, you should be flattered. I don't pull out that kind of material for just anybody. Hello? A teensy bit of thanks would be appreciated. Really? I craft you that beautiful bouquet full to bursting with scornful, derogatory denouncements of your character. Then I take the time to impugn your education, your career, your family, the size of your dick, your honor as a man, and everything in between, all for the express purpose of making you dissolve into a puddle like the Wicked Witch of the West, and the only gratitude I get is goddamn crickets. Some people have no manners. You wound me, sir. Okay, the insult comedy hour is over. I promise. And I certainly do not have my fingers crossed behind my back. That's a damn lie and you know it. If any further insults remain in this video, let God strike me down where I stand. Ha! Nice try, jackass! Next time, give it your A game. Let's continue. Okay, we'll assume that intelligence is one of the traits you specified. You do understand how evolutionary biology works, don't you? Of course you do. That's your field of study. But do you understand evolutionary psychology and chaos theory? I'm guessing that you don't. Because if you did, then you would know perfectly well that your efforts to create the perfect ethnostate will end up exploding in your face, much like the foolish experiments of Gaston Lagaffe. Let me explain chaos theory to you, and then I will tell you exactly how and why your ideas will fail. Let's begin. Physics has had great success at describing certain kinds of behavior. Planets in orbit, spacecraft going to the moon, pendulums and springs and rolling balls, that sort of thing. The regular movement of objects. These are described by what are called linear equations, and mathematicians can solve these equations quite easily. We've been doing it for hundreds of years. But there is another kind of behavior, which physics handles very badly. For example, anything that has to do with turbulence. Water coming out of a spout, air moving over an airplane wing, weather, blood flowing through the heart. Turbulent events are described by nonlinear equations. They're hard to solve. In fact, they're usually impossible to solve. So physics has never understood this whole class of events, at least not until about half a century ago. The theory that describes these new type of equations is called chaos theory. Chaos theory originally grew out of attempts to make computer models of weather in the 1960s. Weather is a big complicated system, namely the Earth's atmosphere as it interacts with the land and the sun. The behavior of this big complicated system always defied understanding, so naturally we couldn't predict the weather. But what the early researchers learned from computer models was that even if you could understand it, you still couldn't predict it. Weather predictions are absolutely impossible. The reason is that the behavior of the system is sensitively dependent on initial conditions. If I were to use a cannon to fire a shell of a certain weight, at a certain speed, and at a certain angle of inclination, and if I were to then fire a second shell with almost the same weight, speed, and angle, what would happen? The two shells would land at almost exactly the same spot. That's linear dynamics. But if I have a weather system that I start out with a certain temperature and a certain wind speed and a certain humidity, and if I then repeat it with almost exactly the same temperature, wind, and humidity, the second system will not behave almost the same. It'll wander off, and rapidly will become very different from the first. Thunderstorms instead of sunshine, That is nonlinear dynamics. They are sensitive to initial conditions. Tiny differences become amplified. The shorthand is the butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings in Beijing, and weather in New York is different. Chaos is not just random and unpredictable. We actually find hidden regularities within the complex variety of a system's behavior. That's why chaos has become a very broad theory that scientists use to study everything from the stock market to rioting crowds to brainwaves during epilepsy, any sort of complex system where there is confusion and unpredictability. We can even find an underlying order contained within. An underlying order that is essentially characterized by the movement of the system within phase space. Chaos theory says two things. First, that complex systems like weather have an underlying order. Second, the reverse of that. It states that simple systems can produce complex behavior. For example, pool balls. You hit a pool ball and it starts to careen off the sides of the table. In theory, that's a very simple system. Almost a Newtonian system. Since you can know the force imparted to the ball and the mass of the ball, and you can calculate the angles at which it will strike the walls, you can predict the future behavior of the ball. In theory, you can predict the behavior of the ball far into the future as it keeps bouncing from side to side. You could predict where it will end up 3 hours from now. In theory. But in fact, it turns out you can't predict more than a few seconds into the future. Because almost immediately very small effects, imperfections in the surface of the ball, tiny indentations at the wood of the table, these things start to make a difference. And it doesn't take long before they overpower your careful calculations. So it turns out that this system of a pool ball on a table has unpredictable behavior. That is a very brief overview of chaos theory. And I cannot stress enough how brief that explanation actually is. If you want to learn more about chaos theory, go pick up a mathematics book on it. I'm talking to the audience. You people, if you want to learn about this, there are plenty of books about it. Go find out. As an old friend of mine used to say, knowledge is the ultimate aphrodisiac. So anyway, what's the point of all this? Why am I explaining chaos theory? It's really simple. Even an idiot could understand it. JF, you are trying to build an ethnostate, a closed system where only people of a single race are allowed to coexist with each other. To do this, you would have to exert absolute control over human biology and human psychology, effectively extinguishing all free will. If you don't, you'll fail. And if you fail even once, your precious gene pool will be soiled. And make no mistake, you will fail. You cannot control animal behavior in such a way. The systems that control animal behavior are nonlinear equations. There are far too many factors to consider. And the factors only grow with time, making chaos theory your sword of Damocles. Allow me to explain further. Some of the women in your society could have flings while on vacation and come back bearing the child of a black man. Your second in command could fall in love with an Arabic woman and have a change of heart. Other countries could interfere and make it impossible to continue. And once the population of your imaginary paradise reaches a certain point, you will lose all control over the situation. Not that you had any control over it to begin with. Let me further explain. Samoa is a small island nation with a total population of slightly over 200,000. Say that the population of your ethnostate was the same size as Samoa. How would you make sure that your precious gene pool remained untainted? How would you keep someone from smuggling in an ethnic minority? And how would you even know if they did? We're talking over 200,000 people. That's twice the capacity of the May Day Stadium in Pyongyang. That is how massive your population would be. You can't even contain it in a single human building. And yet somehow you expect to be able to decide who goes in and who goes out. How on earth would you police this? It's impossible. You'd have to rely on other people at greater and greater rates as the population grew and as the number of actions under your personal control diminished and your power was increasingly delegated. The variables in play would grow exponentially, and the fractal curve would spiral ever more out of your control. You cannot control what other people do, and in the end, at least one of them will betray you, and that's all it takes. It only takes a single stone to start an avalanche, and once enough people see that your power has waned, your illusion of control will be broken. The people will cease to listen to you, and your power will evaporate. Minorities will be allowed in, and the melting pot will continue its work as if you had never existed. You cannot control human evolution. You can neither predict nor alter the future. Evolutionary progress will continue with or without your help. And evolutionary progress points towards the melting pot, because the majority of people do not care about preserving their race. The reason an ethnostate has never succeeded can be explained in a single sentence. From a mathematical standpoint, it simply cannot be done. But I've rambled enough. Why don't we just let Tweedledee and Tweedledum sit in their hug box and continue to fight the inevitable future? After all, they represent no threat to us.
In terms of handling society, in terms of making a society the way you describe it. So there's an infinite drainage of the ability of white to live among other people, isn't it?
Yes, it is. That's why they need to close the back door and the front door in this country and in Europe and clean up the mess. And then if you decide you want to let people of color in again, maybe you can be real selective like they did in the good old days about who you let in.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Security. We got a code black. Code black at the main gate.
Ruckus, what the hell is a code black?
There's some hungry-looking niggers at the front gate.
So, you claim that racial minorities are making it worse for white people? By all means, tell me how my extensive knowledge of science, mathematics, philosophy, and creative writing are somehow causing the downfall of Western civilization. Tell me exactly how my intelligence is in fact ruining the paint on your nice white picket fence. And explain to me how you are helping to create this utopia you seek by pursuing romantic partners that are beneath your intelligence. Isn't the point of your proposed utopian society to create the prime examples of genetic perfection? Exactly how are you contributing to that? These are precisely the variables I was talking about in regards to chaos theory and the pathetic human delusion that control is possible. Look at you, JF. You can't even hold up to your own ideals. How do you expect others to do what you refuse to do yourself? You get a timeout for hypocrisy and illogical thinking. Go sit in the corner and don't move until I tell you otherwise. Oh, Please tell me how you would close that back door. Please enlighten me as to how you would build an effective impediment across a 2,000-mile border. And how would you do so without tripling the national debt? A wall is not the answer. It is utterly ineffective from both a financial and practical standpoint. Building a wall that cannot be scaled and cannot be tunneled under would bankrupt the U.S. Maintaining it would transform the U.S. into a third world country. And even after you destroyed the economy and ruined the lives of average American citizens everywhere, you would still be no closer to preventing illegal immigration than you are now. Do you know why? For the exact same reason that Pepe Le Pew cannot build his ethnostate. You are trying to bend animal behavior to your will, and somehow you actually believe that you can succeed. You can't. You don't understand the mathematical problems with your proposal. If you build a wall, people will scale it. If they cannot scale it, they will go under it. If they cannot go under it, they will go around it. And in the case of the southern border, they will do what they always do. They will do what they are currently doing as I speak. They'll simply come in through the front door. They'll come in through commercial jets with temporary work visas, which will expire, and then these immigrants will simply disappear into the woodwork, getting jobs as cheap labor for the gigantic megacorporations, which people like you refuse to regulate. Do you want to know the secret method for eliminating illegal immigration? The secret is simple, but I don't think it's one you'll enjoy hearing. And I know the politicians won't go for it. The secret has been right in front of you all along. All you have to do is remove the incentive that appeals to illegal immigrants. All you have to do is prevent businesses from giving them jobs. That's it. That's all. That's the big secret. You don't have to do anything else. Removing the monetary carrot that dangles in front of illegal immigrants effectively quashes any reason they'd have to cross the border in the first place. And the only thing you have to do to achieve that is regulate businesses. Prevent businesses from hiring illegal immigrants. And you know what else? This is the gravy on the biscuits. When you do that, Americans that are currently jobless will be presented with new job opportunities. They'll get new jobs, they'll get paid, they'll pay taxes, they'll feed their families, who will get better educations, which will produce new doctors, scientists, engineers, lawyers, policemen, firefighters, businessmen, and tradesmen. Those people will invent new medicines and new technologies. They'll defend the justice system, fight crime, heal the sick, and all of them will pay taxes, which will give more money to the government, which will in turn allow the government to pay for infrastructure, education, law enforcement, national security issues, salaries for federal employees, social programs, and other such expenses. The economy as a whole will improve, and the U.S. will reign as the ultimate undisputed world superpower. Don't you get it? Building a wall solves nothing. That's not how you solve illegal immigration. That actually makes it worse. That's not how you make America great again. You're an idiot. Instead of trying to force immigrants to stay in their own countries, you should remove the reason that they want to cross the border in the first place. If people like you and people like Trump were actually intelligent, all of you would have figured that out 3 years ago. Like everything else in the U.S., The problem you are facing is caused by rampant, unregulated capitalism. Go ahead, call me a commie. It won't remove the logic inherent in my statement. To quote your good friend Ben Shapiro, facts do not care about your feelings. If logic scares you so much, try religion. You don't need logic to worship an imaginary friend.
But and another thing that we are doing too, we are encouraging white people to get married. Don't have babies out of wedlock. Don't abort your children. But white people need to get married and have a truckload of white children and teach them in the right way to go so they can help save America and Europe. Because it's not going to be saved by the people of color. It will be destroyed.
I wake up at 4:45 in the a.m. every morning. That's about 12 hours before most niggas wake up. I am a very spiritual person. I start each day by thanking the white man for the sunrise, for the land I walk on, for the air I breathe. I also apologize for niggas, but Lord knows they ain't gonna apologize for themselves.
Okay, once again, the problem you are trying to address has no solution. You cannot prevent abortions, and you cannot prevent people from having sex before marriage. There are currently 200 million white people living in the U.S. Do you know what you'll achieve if you pass laws against abortion and premarital sex? Nothing. Zero. Zip. You'll fail. All that will happen is that the things that you seek to prohibit will be driven underground. You've tried to do this before. You tried to do it in the 20s. Prohibition failed. Miserably. You tried to stop people from drinking. Guess what? People love alcohol. So they built speakeasies and created moonshine. And you're still trying to do this with the war on drugs. And guess what, Ruckus? People still do drugs. People still do crack, meth, heroin, PCP, shrooms, LSD, and every other illegal drug under the sun. And do you know what else happened because you tried to control human nature? There were unexpected consequences. There always are with chaos theory. In the 20s, the mob dominated society because they provided the one thing that everybody wanted. They gave the people alcohol. They provided illegal alcohol and places to drink it. And because of this, they ruled with an iron fist. The lack of regulation made things worse. I know, big surprise. And history is repeating itself with the war on drugs. Gangs supply the drugs, and they rule with an iron fist, just like the mob did in the 20s. And you know what else? The same thing will happen if you try to ban abortion and premarital sex. And do you know why? Because it's already happening. And it has been for the entirety of human history. Do either of you remember those stories about coat hangers from the 60s? Actually, JF is a bit too young for the 60s. What about the 70s, JF? Or the 80s? Or whenever you were born? Do you remember those stories? What about the stories where women took excessive amounts of over-the-counter drugs in order to terminate unwanted pregnancies? Well, those stories were not just tabloid nonsense. Those actually happened. And so did thousands more like them. And as I explained earlier, controlling human behavior doesn't work. I know it might be shocking to you, but trying to prevent teens from having sex is impossible. A 2007 federal report concluded that abstinence-only programs have no influence on the rate of abstinence. Another study found that students who received proper sex education were in fact 60% less likely to become pregnant than those who received abstinence-only education. And ironically, but not surprisingly, the states that have the highest rate of teen pregnancy are those that practice, say it with me, abstinence-only education. Do you know why all of this happens? It is very simple. I bet you're beginning to understand by this point. Even people with rocks for brains can only fight the truth for so long. This happens because you are trying to control animal behavior. Humans are animals. Animals have a desire to breed. And there are no words you can say, commands you can give, or laws that you can pass that will prevent them from doing this. Give up. You are fighting a losing battle.
And white people, for whatever reason, have been convinced that they need to have one child or two kids or not even any children, put their career first. The women are putting their career first. And as a result, they're going to end up being wiped out because they're not creating other white children. They need to have a truckload of white babies so that they can take over where the older whites are leaving off.
I want to sing y'all a brand new song I just wrote called Don't Trust Them New Niggas Over There. Sing along if you know the words. Don't trust them new niggas over there, leaving they nigga essence in the air. Them happy, nappy-head niggas with the fingers on the trigger. Don't trust them new niggas over there.
Do you know why they do that, Ruckus? Because most American women do not have the luxury of being housewives. Unless we are born into wealth, all of us, male and female, have to work our asses off, or our children will get no education and will probably starve. We all work miserable, thankless jobs with shit pay because Jeff Bezos wants another multi-million-dollar mansion. Do you want more housewives? Then stop protecting corporations and force them to pay us a living wage. Back in the 80s, you could buy a house for $50,000. That would get you a medium-sized house with a 2-car garage. You know what happens now? Now, a house is over $200,000. And we are paid even less than we were in the 80s. You want something to fix? Fix that. You are an idiot. The absolute last thing anyone on Earth needs is more children. Do you have any idea how bad the overpopulation problem has become? I will let you in on something that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats are willing to address. The Earth has a maximum sustainable capacity of 9 billion people. Do you know how many people we have now? 7.5 billion. And do you know what will happen if we continue to produce children at the same rate that we do now? We will exceed our limit before we hit the year 2050. In just 30 years, we will reach the point of no return. And guess what? It gets worse. So much worse. You know what I said a few seconds ago? That only applies if we give up animal products entirely and subsist only on plant-based foods. If we do not do that, then our maximum global population size is 8 billion rather than 9 billion. And we will exceed that in less than 10 years. You know what we need more of? Abortions and contraception. You know what we need less of? Children. Abortion is what will save our species, not destroy it. Your primitive Bronze Age ideology will kill us all. Viva la abortion! And this is coming from a man who wants to have children. Just not biological ones. You know what I plan to do about that? I plan to adopt a couple of children. I plan to adopt children from the foster care system who need me far more than any potential children I might have biologically. That is what I will do to help. Your solution will exacerbate the problem until extinction is inevitable. Your political ideology will kill us all. Congratulations. You will be responsible for planetary level genocide. I guess the serpent was right all along. You have received the power of God. Because you have the power to destroy us all. And you are using it.
Now, looking at the demographic situation of the US and the voting pattern, it seems that what you call the children of the lie are on their way for a constant victory for the next decades and for any foreseeable future in the US. What do you recommend against this political reality? Should there be separation? Should there be trying to educate them into adhering to right-wing views? What do we do?
That's a very good question. And you're right. When I saw the Democrats in this country take over the House again, I was stunned by that. I thought American voters had enough when they got Obama out of there. But because millennials, young people, have been so demoralized and corrupt by the education system and others who are brainwashing them, they are voting these people back in.
As you can see here, I enjoy building small shrines to certain special white people who are important in my life. This one here is dedicated to John Wayne. Great white man. Didn't take no shit from niggers, Indians, nor Mexicans. And this one here is for George Bush the First. Loved him. Now this one here is dedicated to the most soulful soul singer to ever live.
Why don't I let you in on a little secret, Uncle Ruckus? I've never been to a university. I've never received any formal education beyond high school. And you know what? I'm still 50 times smarter than you are. You know what I did with all the time that I would have otherwise spent studying for meaningless social science courses that I neither want nor need? You know what I did with my free time? I spent that time reading. I read books about mathematics, science, history, philosophy, art, music, religion, mythology, and quite a lot of fiction. Do you want to know how many books I've read in the last 18 years? 1,083. And do you know when I'll stop reading? When I'm dead. I've consumed more books in the last 18 years than most modern Americans read in their entire lives. I agree with you on this. The American education system is broken. It is filled with pompous elites who have long since become detached from reality. The majority of social sciences have no place in education and only serve as a drain on society. If you'd like to create a campaign to eliminate social science courses from university curriculums, I will back you all the way, with one caveat. Keep psychology. there still remains a place for those who wish to heal the minds of others. Keep psychology, but by all means, cleanse it of social justice. I won't argue with you for a second about that. I am equally concerned about the corruption inherent within education. I am a proud autodidact. I have learned more in my 30 years on this planet than most people will learn in their entire lives. And you know what remains the most important piece of knowledge that I've learned? One simple sentence. The fact that one idea is wrong does not mean another is right. To put it simply, neither liberals nor conservatives have the right answer. You're both wrong, and I can prove it mathematically.
And so what I suggest is, what I tell the folks all the time is that white people, the good white folks, are going to go to the moon or somewhere else. They're going to create another country. And so I'm saving up my money. So when white people build a spaceship and go out into the space and build another country, I'm going to go with them. And I'm going to be first to buy some of the land because I know the land going to go up really fast. But unless white people take over, it's over for America. And white folks, not all, but most are afraid. They're afraid to be called racist. They're afraid to be called, the men are afraid to be called sexism and all that crap. And so they allow, out of fear, they allow the children of the lie to take over. And I'm very concerned of what's going to happen.
Don't trust them big nostrils over yonder. They suck up so much air, it'll make you wonder. Don't trust them new niggas with their spotty little nigga figures. Don't trust them new niggas over there.
That's funny. That's real funny. You want to go to the moon? You want to build space colonies? You want to create your own space utopia? Tell me something. Have you ever watched Mobile Suit Gundam? Specifically the After Colony era? Of course not. I'm sure you wouldn't be interested in one of those Japanese anime shows that only loser neckbeards watch. Despite the fact that Mobile Suit Gundam literally contains the exact idea you just put forth in multiple different forms. Yeah, I'm sure you wouldn't be interested in the fact that going to space without fixing the problems inherent with our philosophy just makes everything worse. I'm sure you would be bored to tears by the long, bloody war between the space colonies and Earth. I'm sure you would find it utterly dull that the colonies tried to destroy the entire planet. Nah, that's not interesting at all. That's just silly nonsense for men who can't get a girlfriend. It's not like anime has any lessons to teach, right? Why don't you check out Gundam Wing? And after you finish it, why don't you let me know how well that plan worked out for Dakim Barton?
I'm so grateful for President Trump, the Great White Hope, because he has put like a stop to the fast destruction that was on our way when Obama and other Democrats were in charge.
Well, I'm Ruckus, Uncle Ruckus, no relation. And I work for Mr. Wansler. And you slick niggas ain't gonna fast talk your way into this here party.
Oh my God! The Great White Hope? I mean, Jesus Christ! I was kidding! I was kidding about the Uncle Ruckus shit. But you actually ran with it, you absolute lunatic! I think I just had a minor stroke. How do you function? Do people actually take you seriously? They do? That's absurd! Mankind is in far greater danger than I imagined. Will someone please get the trained squirrels? I think this man is a bad nut. Down the garbage chute with him. Honestly, I don't know how I find these people. This is the worst example yet. Remember when I responded to that MGTOW? Remember when he was the dumbest thing on my channel? Remember Rose McGowan? I seem to be a dunce magnet. But unlike with JF, it isn't voluntary. I don't want to be around these people. What am I doing with my life? Jesus Christ, have I reached the bottom of the barrel? Nah, can't be. I'm sure the world has worse. There's always a bigger fish. After all, they seem to be getting increasingly stupid with each one I come across. Wait, are they getting dumber? Or am I just getting smarter? And if that's the case, at what point will my growth stop? Or will it even stop at all? Will I continue to gain intelligence until I stop moving, buy a wheelchair, and become Stephen Hawking? Nah, that only happened once. There can only be one Professor Hawk. Still, it never hurts to shoot for the stars. That way, no matter where I land, I can still have something to strive for. Hey, JF, Uncle Ruckus, you can do it too. Shoot for the stars. That way it'll be so much more fun when I kick you back into the dirt. Enjoy being a running joke among intellectuals everywhere. Enjoy being the finest examples of the Dunning-Kruger effect to ever cross my path. What an absolute couple of nitwits. If I were to create a metaphor for the sole purpose of describing my thoughts on the two of you, it would be this. When one spots a cockroach skittering upon one's floor, does one stop to consider it a fool? Does one greet the cockroach? Does one inquire as to how the insect spent its day? Does one set out a plate of food for the small creature to sate the hunger that it feels? Does one provide a bed upon which to rest its tiny head? Or does one crush the still struggling insect beneath one's boot with a look of disgust upon one's face, and then mop up the remains with a rag that will simply be disposed of in the morning? And when one extinguishes the life from this being that scuttled busily upon the kitchen tile only moments before, does one stop to imagine how the family of this cockroach will survive without their beloved father? Does one pity for the infant cockroaches that cry out in hunger? Does one pity the wife that will never see their husband? Of course not. All these thoughts are so far beyond human psychology that we do not even consider that a cockroach is anything but a pox upon our domiciles. We carry no sympathy for this insignificant speck. Why is this? Well, it all boils down to the simple fact that the cockroach is in the end an inferior species. The emotions felt by cockroaches are of no consequence to us whatsoever. A cockroach is a lesser being, a thing that is so far below us in its development that in our eyes it barely qualifies as a living thing. It befouls our food, it defecates in our houses, it triggers allergies that make us miserable. And worst of all, it breeds, creating a dreadful infestation, which we must then eliminate. The cockroach is a pernicious, but ultimately inconsequential household pest. And that is how I view you and your ilk. You are beneath me. You are lower forms of life. You are parasitic worms that we willingly consume as we greedily feast upon the foul, scabrous ideas that you bestow upon our plates. And once you've slithered your way into our minds, you burrow deep inside our mental strongholds, where you grow fat while feeding upon our emotions. And then you expel vast quantities of ideological excrement that ooze into our rationality, causing our thoughts to putrefy until they are covered in vile, fetid, gangrenous pseudo-intellectual ideas. You are an infestation of termites that gnaw upon the foundation of our society, devouring more and more and more until the entire structure is compromised and it crumbles under its own weight, leaving nothing but a dusty pile of rubble. You are a hungry swarm of pestilential locusts that feast upon the bountiful crops of American prosperity, consuming everything in the field of American values, laws, freedoms, and rights, until the country is barren and the people hunger for the prosperity that for so long they took for granted. You add nothing to society. I don't think you are in fact mammals at all. All mammals have an innate biological drive to coexist with each other and their environment. Now that I think about it, you are not a parasite, nor are you termites or locusts. Your sole reason for existing seems to be based on infesting a society, feeding upon whatever you can, and then converting others into your ideological doppelgangers, which poisons the hapless fools that you lead astray. And once you create a successful copy of your ideological matrix, you move on to convert another host. There is another organism that shares these traits. Do you know what it is? It's a virus. People like you are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You are a plague, and critical thinking is the cure. Well, this looks like the end. I don't know about the rest of you, but I plan to spend my evening curled up on my sofa with a book. And for once, I will share with you what I am reading. I'm reading The Lucifer Principle by Howard Bloom. It's fascinating. It's a spectacular look into how the concept of evil is a product of human evolution, and it actually serves creation rather than destroying it. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever read. The book explains how ideas are transferred from person to person, how they are shaped, how that shape has changed over time, how human behavior is affected by this, and how mankind and everything else on the planet is part of an enormous superorganism with multiple functioning parts, much like the multicellular life of the Precambrian era. I really suggest that you all read it. If you do, a lot of the events you experience both big and small, personal and global, internal and external, past, present, and future, will start to make sense. Read the book. Read any book. Books give you knowledge, and they are fun. I'm the Deputy of Common Sense. I dispense swift justice to those who aren't so swift. And if Pepe Le Pew and Uncle Ruckus make sense to you, you need treatment stat. I recommend extreme doses of books. Read one book a week until the two people in this video begin to resemble Foghorn Leghorn. Apply this treatment every time you start to think they have a point. Because the only point that they possess is the one on top of their heads. Go read something. Read anything. Reading gives you knowledge. Knowledge is power, and knowing is half the battle. Have a pleasant evening, and have an excellent read.
Gee, Rain, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
The Pinky and the Brain, yes, Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. They're laboratory mice, their genes have been spliced. They're Pinky and the Brain, 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 brain. Before each night is done, their plan will be unfurled by the dawning of the sun. They'll take over the world. They're Pinky and the Brain, yes, Pinky and the Brain. Their twilight campaign is easy to explain. To prove their mousy worth, they'll overthrow the earth. They're Pinky and the Brain, 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 brain.